The original Microsoft Xbox was a console built on things like hype and expectations. From the system itself being unveiled by a skit with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Bill Gates.
What would it be like if you were only running on 1/5 of his power?
Well, I would think that...
It doesn't matter what you think, Bill. I'm sorry, Bill. It's just a force of habit.
To things like the Halo 2 overnight campout release. But with all the great games and hype over the years on the system, Fable comes to mind. Now let's back up a little bit to 2003. One of the top sellers on the system was LucasArts' RPG Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, or KOTOR. Now the game was beloved by fans like myself for its narrative, its gameplay, and its awesome alignment system that saw player action impact things like character appearance, gameplay systems, and how the world kind of viewed and interacted with your protagonist. So take KOTOR, tack on some titles like Elder Scrolls Morrowind, Arx Fatalis, and original Xbox owners were very used to what a good RPG looks like. So expectations were very high with the announcement of Fable by Lionhead Studios to be released the following year in 2004, with systems very similar to KOTOR, but with lofty promises to redefine the RPG genre as the world knew it. So enters a man named Peter Molyneux to the story, a veteran game developer known and respected for his work on games like Dungeon Keeper and Black and White, two games that pushed the envelope in their own right with extremely innovative ideas that were executed very well. So much was expected of Fable and of Peter prior to the release, and the game spent 4 years in development with all these extremely ambitious and exciting features apparently to be included. Peter himself offered up some eyebrow-raising promises, few more famous than the quote acorn statement, in which he said that there would be systems akin to being able to plant an acorn in the game and play long enough to see it go from sapling into a big old beautiful tree. Now amongst others were that you could have children, play online with your friends via Xbox Live, watch your character actually grow old and die, and then have your child become the playable character moving forward. I mean, loads of this shit that if they had made it into the game would have perhaps lived up to Peter's quote, "It's gonna be the best game ever." Now sure, a few of these things did find their way into Fable 2, like having a family and so on, but the lofty expectations were inevitably going to be met with some disappointment upon release of the game. The game still sold extremely well, and overall it was positively received, but some of that backlash led to Molyneux even posting an official apology on the Lionhead message board about those hollow promises, which just begs the question. I mean, why? Why do these developers hype up their own games on things that they probably deep down know are having trouble implementing into the game and might not make the cut? I mean, it just hurts the image of the game when the existing product is still really good. It's like saying, hey man, come here and get this big old nice pizza, a whole pizza pie, and you're getting all excited. You're like, ooh, I'm thinking about that pizza pie. And then you show up at the spot and there's one slice of pizza. I mean, it's still really good pizza, but you got man hungry and he's expecting the whole pizza. Now, I only mention all of this kind of background information because I think it is important with the history of Fable to acknowledge this specific trend, which would unfortunately continue with Fable 2 and with Fable 3 in other ways, with the franchise kind of seemingly always chasing its own ambitions into the future, only to further build up some of that hype on more kind of false promises. Now, excusing and putting aside all of the shitty PR from this fella, who even admitted to it with this quote, the game that was released is in its own way a masterpiece. I mean, it blends this clever writing, humor, really straightforward gameplay, and the classic contrast of good and evil in a really satisfying and kind of compact way. So let's dive in. Let's talk about some of the aspects of this game that really work, and then just maybe a few things that held Fable back from the lofty titles of the time like Morrowind and KOTOR. It's also quickly worth noting that the game has had several releases. So you have the OG Xbox version, which was followed by Fable: The Lost Chapters in 2005, which was also simultaneously released on PC, and that's what I'm playing here. This version added a few more areas and some extra story missions to the game, and just overall is kind of seen as like the definitive version of Fable 1. More recently, though, the game was, quote, remastered into Fable Anniversary, which is overpriced in my opinion with updated graphics, but I kind of prefer the original look of the game, so we're going to stick with that for this video. Now let's start with kind of the setting and the story of Fable. So the setting and story are very much rooted in kind of classic fantasy and folk tales. The country or province that we spend actually the entire series in so far is known as Albion. It's very medieval feeling land with kind of lush forests, plains, castles, farmlands, mountains, and of course its share of things like graveyards, caves, swamps, and other kind of dusty locales to fight some bad dudes in. Now this is a setting that at first glance seems a little generic, but immediately when you start your journey, you are charmed by the presentation of the world and the characters that inhabit it. I mean, that's kind of the defining quality of Fable for me, is that it delivers this familiar package, but in a way that's kind of hard to put your finger on. No other game that I've played in the genre kind of hits that same tone that Fable does. I know that other people who love Fable will understand what I mean here. The game opens with your main character, just a small boy in the quaint village of Oakvale on your big sister's birthday. What could go wrong, right? I mean, we get a nice, easy introduction to the game and the mechanics that are going to be present throughout.
Get him off me! Please help! He goes around the town beating up anyone smaller than him. But you look strong. I bet you could scare him off for good.
Before, ooh, shocker, bandits come in and kind of fuck everything up for you. But you are saved by an old hero, and you again get to take up control of your character some years later as a budding hero or villain as you see fit. Now, to avoid any potential spoilers, that is as far as I will describe the plot. I think it should be experienced firsthand. But the strength of Fable to me is just the sheer freedom that you have from this point forward. So sure, you're going to be somewhat tied to that main story quest for the majority of the game. It's not necessarily like an open world game like an Elder Scrolls title, but the manner in which you complete the game and side missions will make you feel very much in control of the world and every small event. Now that takes me to the alignment system, which is perhaps the game's most recognizable and successfully implemented trait. So not only will there be those kind of like, basic A, B, good and evil choices at the end of a quest, say like sparing someone versus just like murdering them, but also actions that you can make as the player anytime you want, independent of the story. So, okay, you want to be good? Literally eat tofu, kill monsters, save some villagers from danger, pray a lot, wear pleasant-looking clothing and armor with the right bonuses. Now, do you want to be evil? Then, eat some baby chicks, kill innocent people, give some blood to the Chapel of Scorn, abuse your spouse, wear the bad guy gear with those bonuses. So the way you play is going to dictate kind of your hero and his alignment. Though it's nice that it isn't very rigid. I mean, you can go back from the path of evil, or you can have a fall from grace. And what's really cool is everything you're going to do is going to start to impact your appearance. So if you're evil for long enough, your skin starts to go gray. You grow horns and go bald and start looking like shit, and flies will buzz around you and stuff like that. While good guys will get halos, butterflies, and a heavenly glow. People will say, "Oh, hero," whenever you enter a town.
Yeah, well, I suppose he did all right.
We still talk about you here.
And there's also stages to those transformations, so you kind of feel the light or the dark taking over your character over time. But there's another bar that's the attractiveness bar. So obviously, a good character might be deemed more attractive than an evil character, but also you can get fat from eating too much. And if you're like me, you're going to be eating like turkey legs and shit while you're in combat because you're too lazy to get potions. But that's going to have an impact on your character's weight, which is going to have an impact on how NPCs are going to view you. Now, just stop for a second and think about all the creative freedom that is now given to the player to kind of decide who the hero of Oakvale is going to be. I mean, maybe you're a benevolent champion who slowly starts becoming corrupt when buying up property and raising the rent until you're kind of a gluttonous gray blob. Or maybe you're just a bastard from day one, or a goody two-shoes from day one. I mean, the world truly feels like it's your oyster every fresh playthrough, and it gives the game a sort of revisit it every year type of charm that is just essential to me in an RPG. Now on top of that, your character does physically age 0.7 years per skill upgrade, which is an awesome way to kind of feel like you've come a long way since you were a bright-eyed teen starting out at the guild. There's also a random chance for scarring on your character's face and body to occur every time you take a damaging hit, but those scars will also fade as you level up your skills and progress through time. These are all things that I think people would be more universally praising if Peter Molyneux hadn't promised so much more on top of these already impressive and immersive systems for the time that we actually got. But, dude, I digress. I gotta let it go, man. Just let it go. So from a gameplay perspective, things are kept pretty straightforward. This is very much an action RPG, opposed to anything tactical or turn-based. And I think overall it's a strength. I mean, the game doesn't need to reinvent the wheel to be instantly engaging as a gameplay experience. So for experience, speaking of, you're going to gain general experience as you kind of quest and play through the game, but you're also going to get specific experience upon killing enemies depending on what you killed them with. So you can kind of progress through the game doing what you're enjoying and getting stronger at that thing. So if you're enjoying melee weapons, you're going to get strength experience. If you enjoy ranged weapons, you're going to get skill experience. And if you enjoy magic, you're going to get will experience. All of this experience can be kind of spent on skill upgrades and abilities to kind of like up your strength as you progress through the game. Now, while the gameplay is, simple-ish, things like the arena section of the game or fighting certain types of enemies like the trolls are going to keep your mind kind of busy enough, It's not a button masher necessarily, though I can't continue without mentioning that the difficulty of this game is kind of an issue for me anyway. It's just too damn easy. This was a criticism upon release, and it kind of stands up today that the Fable series as a whole would just be better off with a splash of difficulty here and there. And I'm not talking about like Dark Souls levels, but just add in a few encounters that you kind of need to prepare for. Get players out into the world of Albion, leveling up and finding weapons or building strategies to overcome some of those bosses or puzzles. That sort of thing would just make the items and the progress even more rewarding than they already are. There is one sort of side activity which might test you more than others, and it's in my opinion the crown jewel of not only Fable 1 but the whole series, and that is demon doors. So these are these big doors with this face that are scattered throughout the world, and each one is going to offer up some kind of unique challenge to the hero for the door to then be opened.
I never open on the first date. My heart has been broken too many times before.
So sometimes you're going to need to solve a nice little riddle, others you're going to be faced with a wave of enemies, or, show up wearing the right outfit and the door will open. I think in the Lost Chapters there are like 15 doors, and all of them are super different from the last, and a lot of them are going to give you a good chuckle as well. When you open a demon door, you're going to be given some sort of reward. I'm not going to spoil any of them as they're fun to kind of solve and uncover for yourself, but they're all absolutely worth visiting, and they give a little mystery to the world. They make it feel like you really are a true hero or villain uncovering some ancient loot to help you on your journey.
The union's refusing to pay up, even though today is the last day.
Now, I mentioned that some of those demon doors are going to give you a chuckle, and that's true of many things in Fable.
I just got out of guard college last week, and I only got a C- in hostage recovery.
The writing is very kind of Terry Pratchett-esque. It's self-aware and honest and super British. My favorite moment comes within like the first 10 minutes of playing the game.
Girl, come on, let's go and break stuff. Are you just gonna stand there like a lemon?
But the humor just radiates from Fable. I mean, it never takes itself too seriously, from the jokes to the general art style, but still is somehow telling a pretty compelling story about a man attempting to reclaim what was taken from him. And it has a great balance in this respect. You know, from the lightest interactions to some of the more dark areas of the game, you just get a great sense of scale in that experience.
We must leave. It's not safe here.
To me, the final piece of the Fable puzzle and what makes it so great is the music. I mean, the music in this game is incredible. Danny Elfman, who composed, you know, Nightmare Before Christmas, Edward Scissorhands, amongst other things, composed the title theme, with the rest of the soundtrack being written by Russell Shaw. Now, these have become some of the most iconic video game tracks to date. Every song from the Guild theme to the Temple of Light theme are just dripping in atmosphere and mystery and magic. It makes every location you visit feel like something of legend or from a fable, from some long-gone age of heroes and villains, and you're just getting to take a peek. Fable's a fantastic game, but it wouldn't be half of what it is without this just stellar soundtrack. I think just at its core, Fable is a game that embodies the word cozy. Sure, it isn't perfect, and it isn't quite as deep as other RPGs on the system, but the general game experience is one that I think a lot of players seem to be more drawn to. Many people have dubbed it, quote, a great first RPG, and to some extent I agree. I mean, but if you can enjoy the simple magic that this game provides, even the most seasoned RPG veteran can still appreciate Fable. I think this review from Xbox Evolved, dated from 2004, kind of states it the best. Those who enjoy experimenting with every possibility in their games will find enough in Fable to keep them busy for countless hours of fun and wonder, while gamers who appreciate more objectives and a clear sense of direction will probably burn through the story quickly and have little reason to play through a second time. And to be honest, I think some other RPGs of the time, even ones that I love, might prove to be a little archaic today for a first-time player, where Fable has kind of aged
Like a lemon?
like wine, and I believe it still remains totally approachable and wonderful today, even without the kind of unnecessary updated graphics. Now, we've gotten 3 Fable games to date, and I plan on covering 2 and 3 as well, but we can only hope that with the closing of Lionhead Studios, someone else kind of comes along to...
Not all stories have happy endings. But yours has yet to be written.
Well, would you look at that? Fable 4, or I guess, I don't know, Fable 1 again, has just been announced for Xbox Series X and PC. So, you know, I look forward to what the future holds. I'm optimistic. Yeah, that's it. Thank you, and goodbye.